of the Community Development Authority, Thursday, May 9th, 2024. And I would ask you to note, Rachel, to note roll call. I don't have an announcement unless you do. Okay, so we will move to the minutes from 4/11, from April 11th. And I would entertain a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Are there any edits or comments? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Can I interject for just 2 seconds? It looks like Sheila might have a recording thing or a transcribing thing. Is it possible to ask you to turn that off, Sheila? I think that
Yeah.
would duplicate a record on our part, and we have the recording on this side.
Yeah, sorry, it came on automatically. It's off.
Thank you.
How do you even know that? Oh,
It shows up as its own square.
okay. All right. Well, thank you. And I'm glad to know you're here, Sheila.
Yeah.
We have no public appearances. And so we'll move to new business, and I would ask Alex to update us regarding staff turnover.
Yep, so as you're all aware, Zach Grokey has moved on to his next phase of his professional journey. So congratulations to him. He will be going over to work for Bishop's Bay as their HOA manager right now. So that's a nice opportunity for him. In the meantime, Jay and I have been connecting to sort of divvy up some of the responsibilities and make sure that we're, staying on top of what we need to stay on top of. I've been taking more of the leasing admin side of things. Jay is continuing on with handling the workload that he's got on his plate. Although he's also been filling in on coordinating and communicating with contractors, which has been really good. We just had the street, Jefferson Court was repaved, and the parking lots were all redone too. And Jay was coordinating that work. So kudos to him on that. That usually would have fell to Jack. It was Jack. See, he's gone and it's already, that's what happens. We've had a landscape contractor who has a new group mowing for us. So Jay's been coordinating that as well. So we're piecing it together. Our next step is to kind of, as we've got a few agenda items on further in the meeting tonight to kind of discuss a couple options, but we need to make sure that we're getting clear direction from you all in terms of how we want to proceed. And then try to either hire for the position or see how we can accommodate some of the management pieces going forward. You'll see the second item on our agenda here is a presentation from a company that does management services. I wanted to have this conversation first to kind of set the stage on, or excuse me, the third item on the agenda, why they're on the agenda. Obviously, we want to be moving relatively quickly. So the more information I can get to you all sooner in this process, the quicker we can get back on our feet.
I just want to add to that. It makes me very nervous because I know your workload in your other job. And I know how busy you are. So taking on these additional duties is a little scary to me.
Yeah, I will say that's why I'm pretty far behind on phone calls, because I don't think I fully realized the sheer number of phone calls that Zach got. So that's part of that.
Okay,
So are there any questions or comments at this point? Yeah.
Rebecca.
Maybe it's a good experience then, so that you know exactly what's needed.
Yeah,
In one sense, turn the negative into a good positive, so.
Yep.
We're helping find the right person.
No, that's a great point.
Still have your monthly meetings, Jefferson Square? No?
Yep, we're gonna, until we figure out the next steps, we're gonna try to keep everything running as normal. So we've had, since Zach has left, we did have the resident advisory committee meeting at Jefferson Square. We had the final resident-wide meeting over there when he was still on board, and then we had a public housing meeting while he was still on board too. I want to continue to do the advisory committee stuff over at Jefferson Square. Jay's a part of that as well. And then we'll both be doing the resident meetings for both facilities as well.
Okay. Other comments or questions? Is there anything you're doing that you don't have to do?
I think if those things were there, you know, we wouldn't be doing them in the first place. I think at this point, it's kind of a prioritization and understanding between the two of us that there are things that are going to take longer
Yeah.
than they did before. And that's just going to have to be okay. And we've communicated that up front to residents. And so far, everybody's been very understanding. You know, and ultimately, it's just going to come down to prioritization.
Okay, good. Anything else on that?
Not for me.
Okay,
Jay, do you have anything to add?
all right. Well, let's move to 6.2. There is a discussion and potential action on resolution 2024-505, thanking Zach Grolke for his years of service to the CDA of the Village of DeForest. It was in your packet. I would entertain a motion to approve it.
Very firmly motion to approve.
Motion by Rebecca. Is there a second? Second by Renee. Any comments, discussion?
I'll just make a quick comment. So Zach was hoping to be here tonight, couldn't, he had another commitment. He was very appreciative of the fact that we're entertaining this motion. I will just say that I know that normally these are reserved for people who are, you know, retiring, not necessarily moving on to another position, but I think a resident at Jefferson Square put it really well at that last meeting. They basically said, to Zach, you grew up here. So I felt it was appropriate given his years with the organization and also his family history as well.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed? Motion carries. Rachel, your face gets sad every time his name is mentioned. Yeah, she'll get over it. Well, Item 6.3 is presentation and discussion from Attic Angel Community. Let me just say this is a group that has been doing these sorts of services, management services, and they're currently doing Parkside in Windsor. And so they have, and there are others that they do, but they have a lot of experience, and it becomes an option for us to look at contracting the services. So please come to the middle table. And then what do you want to say, Alex?
I was just gonna basically echo some of what you did. So Derek Buckley is with Attic Angel. I had reached out when Zach had kind of let me know to Jamie Rybarczyk over at Village of Windsor, who had nothing but good things to say about their services. So it was a natural opportunity for me to then reach out and invite him here to talk a little bit more.
Okay, well, I'll let you start.
Hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me here to give you this introduction for Attic Angel. For those of you that don't know, Attic Angel is actually a nonprofit organization started 135 years ago. And since then, it was founded and has always been led by women, strong leadership women. So it's a very unique organization in Madison. We started the first, what do I do here? Sorry. Oh, okay. So just a real brief history. We started the first hospital in Madison. We started the first Visiting Nurses Association in Madison. How we got our name, basically the Bryant sisters used to collect donated clothes for underprivileged children. And one day their dad saw them coming down from the attic and said, oh, there's my Attic Angels. And that's how the organization started. So I've been with the organization for 14 years. I've been in long-term care, senior care for 30 years now. We started the management services 2015. And at that time we were doing assisted living facilities, and we started with a facility in Sun Prairie. We moved into a independent living in Verona, where we have Oakmont which is a 99-bed facility. There we are part owners and managers. Then we we went to Olympic Village, also in Sun Prairie. And there they were going through a bankruptcy, and we were asked to help them through that process. That is also a residency fee life community. And so we got them through the bankruptcy. We secured $1 million loan for them. They were able to pay that within the year. Now they're very successful. Then we were asked to go to Parkside, where the developer was actually retiring, and we took that over in September, and it's been a great experience there. The residents have been wonderful. And that's kind of what Alex was saying. Then Jamie kind of reached out and said, you should contact these guys. So some of the things that Attic Angel does, we do a lot of not-for-profit charity donations. So each year we have signature events, clothing sales, where we donate hundreds of thousands of dollars to Dane County charities. And these are focused on seniors and for children. And I just listed a few on your chart there that last year we donated to.
Can I interrupt a second? Where in all three parts, Parkside, or what? Just assisted living or what?
Not the assisted living. The assisted living is managed by Encore Management, and that's a totally separate entity from the independent living.
All right, so really what you have is the one that's 3 stories up,
And correct, and then
and the private ones?
the duplexes that surround, yep. So just to give you an idea of how much Attic Angel donated into what charities. The next slide is kind of our, just our structure. So Attic Angel, we added the Attic Angel Management Services, as I said, in 2015. Age Better is our sale program, and that is seniors active independent living. And that is a membership program that we offer to seniors, and it helps them keep them in their homes for as long as safely as possible. And these are volunteer services. So volunteer drivers, they pick up medications, they can take you to your physician appointments. We've also have an approved vendor list that we have vetted, so that if you need grab bars in the showers and things like that, we can offer those services that specialize in seniors. Oh, these are the listing of just a few of the local properties that we manage. Let's go through. Okay, and these are the all of the services that we offer. Not every one of our properties takes advantage of all these services, so we do tailor our packages depending on what the community needs. And we have different business cycles in each property. So as I mentioned, in Verona, we are part owners and managers. In Olympic Village, we actually started a resident board nonprofit for them. That's made up of a minority of residents and then outside community members. So they have their own board, and we manage, our management contract is with their board. For Parkside, as I mentioned, we are just managing the day-to-day operations right now. And then we are trying to manage all of these sales and marketing activities, and hopefully that closes within the next 30 to 45 days. So we really do kind of tailor what the community needs to what we can offer them. Questions? I'm trying to keep this really brief, so.
No, we appreciate that.
Yeah.
Renee, was that a hand up or?
Not yet.
Okay, Doug.
So if we went with you, would we have a contract? And if so, what are the terms, like the length that you go?
Our typical management contract is 5 years. And then it's evergreen or with a termination clause. And then pricing would depend on the services that you have. I appreciate, as Alex was saying, about having the coverage, especially when you go on vacation. One of the nice things with Attic Angels is we have a team of departments. So finance department, if someone from billing went out, that billing cycle would continue. If the director of the community goes out, we have other directors in the communities that can take that. Maintenance, I have a team of maintenance of 12 people that can go to different communities based on what they need. So we have those resources to be able to cover.
Okay. Rebecca.
And I'm not sure if you're the right person to answer this or if you're the right person to answer this, but given how we've managed it in the past, and some of the answers you've given so far, I'm wondering would they be potentially taking over some of the stuff that, like the billing and stuff? Because I mean, right now, we've got that kind of streamlined from my understanding between the village and
No,
village staff and stuff,
correct. No, this would pertain just to Jefferson Square.
just to Jefferson Square. Okay, that's making better sense now. So so would they be? I guess I'm going to have to ask a lot of questions, but not necessarily in this forum. I want to understand kind of the parameters of what we would potentially be looking at. Would you guys be looking at actually doing the interviewing of people for renting or showing the properties, rehabbing them, or I'm assuming you guys would still be doing the rehabbing? So that's my questions,
Yeah.
the parameters.
Yep, just to kind of clarify, because I think the next item on the agenda would probably be a good spot to talk about that a little bit more, because that focuses more on our approach, I guess, going forward and some of the feedback that I would like to get from you all too. I think, that's something that would be a discussion with whether it's Attic Angel or any kind of services that we were to look at. Those are the types of things that we would try to first get what we want, obviously, and part of that is involving your input, again, I think in the next item on the agenda. And then having a negotiation with any kind of services about what we're actually looking for them to provide. But I would just say at this point, if there's questions particularly pertaining to the organization for Attic Angel, I think that would this would be the time to have those types of questions.
Can I just comment on, just as a management company in general, the most effective, efficient operation for a company like ours would be complete, sales and marketing renovations, only because they're so intertwined. You get a new tenant in and says, no, I'd like this kind of carpet or this paint, which affects the renovations, which then affects the maintenance, who's going to come and do it. It's just, everything is so intertwined. But that doesn't mean it has to be that way. It's just the most efficient and effective.
So what are you saying, what is maintenance? How far does that go out? I mean, as far as, you're still gonna have to hire people, obviously, to mow lawn, do the snow, or what?
I'll tackle and then you can chime in. So we have contracts in place right now. So we would have to, if we were going with a service, we would have to, again, that would be part of the negotiations and trying to figure out how all those pieces play. I think, to Derek's point, what he was just saying, from an efficiency standpoint, probably I would imagine from a cost standpoint from us, and just a functioning standpoint, I think it probably would make sense to have, if we were to hire a management company, to have them coordinate all those things. And I mean, that's part of the attraction of those types of services, is it reduces the administrative burden on us. From a maintenance perspective, I also want to make clear, and this would be part of the negotiation with any company that we were bringing in, we have a maintenance person on staff. So that would be part of the negotiation too, is how does that individual integrate with this and making sure that that's functioning smoothly.
What's next?
I think Derek might have wanted to, did you have anything to add?
Well, and so there are some services where we contract out with vendors. At some communities, it's Bruce Company. At some communities, it's TNT, local landscape and snow removal companies. So we like to use local because I can give them a call and say, we've got 3 inches of snow, I need it cleared now, kind of a thing. But we also get those efficient economies of scale when we use some of those companies that can do all of our properties. We get the price breaks on those.
Thank you. Renee had a question.
I'm green. So one is reporting out. How often do you report out? Or is it that you have communication? I don't know if it would be with Alex in this point, and it's a consistent and he's reporting out on what's happening?
So it varies a little bit depending on the community. We are used to doing either monthly or quarterly reports to our boards. So that would be kind of an operational report. For some of the boards, because we also do budgets for most of the communities too. So we do a financial report for them as well. But it would really depend on what you're used to. We can accommodate monthly, quarterly, whatever schedule.
I'm green again. Then my second question, based on the facilities that you had in your presentation, which would you say is the most similar to what you know about Jefferson Square and what we would need?
That is a great question. I would say from a 30,000-foot level, probably Olympic Village.
Okay,
One thing I have found are the residents within the community are the big differences and they're within the communities. And so our biggest challenge, for instance, Parkside, it's our newest one, is managing the expectations. When we went in, there were a lot of wants and needs that hadn't been addressed in a while. And so it's when they see things starting to happen, they're like, oh, me now. And it doesn't always happen that way. And really the most effective way to manage those is communication. We started regular resident meetings over there. They'd never had those before, but that's something that we're just used to. That's kind of our culture. And having the open door policies and all those things. So our culture, and I told, we actually had meetings before we started there. We want people to live in their homes as safely as long as possible, whether that means bringing in outside vendors, doing some adaptive equipment, even technology now. And I think that's the biggest fear for people in these communities is when am I going to be forced to move? And we're trying to prevent that.
thanks.
Okay. Rebecca has her hand up.
Yeah, just two questions, basically. One, are we going to be seeking input from the residents on their perspective of this? That's one question. Two, have you ever, in the management that you've done, have you ever done this with a CDA before?
I'm going to say yes and no, and I clarify that because with Windsor, it's a very unique relationship. Windsor basically still owns the assets of Parkside.
Okay.
The developer owns the right to live there. And that's how their contract works. It's a little convoluted. So our intention with Windsor is to have a much more open relationship. And when I talk to Bob and the Jamies and things, they want to have more input in what's the operations. And so part of our communication up and down the chain will include Windsor, whereas historically it has not.
Okay. Yeah, basically, I guess the question was really getting at, and I think you maybe have answered it, but the type of oversight, so to speak, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
This type of oversight, have you dealt with this type of oversight?
Not in this name, but I would say it in my mind, it's very much like my board.
is.
I have multiple boards that I report to and that I have to report up to.
Okay.
To the first question, we will definitely be communicating consistently with our residents. I think maybe at the next agenda item, we can talk about how you all would like to see that take place too.
Okay. Any other questions? It's a little scary to people to look at change.
If I could, I might invite Rachel, Carol, and Jay if they have any questions or anything. Obviously, they're a big piece of this team too. So if there's anything that you guys, good.
I was asked to offer by my Parkside residents, they are free to talk with your residents to give them feedback. So I just throw that out.
That'll occur. A number of Parkside people and a number of Jefferson Square people go to Christ Lutheran Church, and I assure you that conversation will occur.
It's wonderful. Wonderful.
Oh, yeah. You go to Wednesdays at the DeForest Family Restaurant and they're all there.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, we really appreciate your coming in. This is a new concept in some ways for us, and we're gonna chat through it and figure out what we want to do or how we want to begin the process. So I really appreciate you've been open and sharing with us. And we know it's a good organization. Many of us have worked with Attic Angels over the years. So we look forward to having discussions going forward.
Well, thank you all so much.
Thank you. Look at that, it's not raining. Yeah. We were here for the board meeting Tuesday night when all that hail and rain was happening. Yeah, couldn't hear a thing. All right, the next agenda. The next agenda item is 6.4, discussion regarding housing management services.
So you have the memo in your package. There's kind of two different approaches that we can take with this. One is continue as we've been operating. I do have a job description for the role that Zach was filling. Should we desire to go that way? Jay and I have also had some conversations, very high level conversations about whether or not that structure makes sense, or maybe there's a different kind of structure. If we were to hire and keep everything in-house, would we want to hire a direct replicate of what we had before, or is there sort of a hybrid approach? So that's something that we've been talking about. And then obviously the other path would be to see about bringing on a management company. Obviously, I think one of the things that you pointed out, Rebecca, in the last item was, does this pertain to all of our units, or does this pertain, would a management company pertain just to Jefferson Square, just to public housing? How does that look? In a private conversation with Derek, they thought that they could potentially look at also accommodating our public housing. I don't know that I'm necessarily ready to go that route with everything that we're going through from a transition standpoint. But certainly there are management companies that specialize in those types of housing as well. So there's a number of different options on the table. I tried to just do a quick and dirty pros and cons for you, just to kind of lay it all out there. But really at this point, I'd love to get your input in terms of the comfort level that you feel with these two different approaches. I will share that from my role and my perspective, I do think that the approach that I would prefer would be to bring in a management company. I think there's a lot of benefits to that. I think the administrative burden is a lot less. I just think it may even result in a cost savings. I don't know. We'd have to actually get into negotiations. But that would be my preference, obviously with the big caveat that we get to keep our staff and, continue to operate in a reasonable way that we.
One of the things we should consider as we're going through this discussion is the fact that as we move towards building and development of a new facility for public housing, the two of you are going to have more and additional responsibilities related to that. And there's a point at which the rubber band snaps. So I think we have to consider that as we look at at services, et cetera. Keith and then Rebecca.
Well, probably for Jay and Alex both, if you do go with management, how are you gonna handle requests and are they gonna still go through Jay, or if people call up, or they write in work orders? How's that gonna be handled?
For the work order system?
Yeah.
Well, so I think one thing that I want to underscore is no matter what, if it's Attic Angel or if it's somebody else, no matter what management company that we bring on board, we're going to structure the contract in the way that we want it. So that question is really for us, and I'll also point that to Jay too. In this case, it'll probably have to be a hybrid, right? Because our work order system spans between both facilities. So we would likely keep our work order system for some things, but it'd also be nice to carry that over to somebody else and have that burden sort of be on them, coordinating with our staff on the things that we need to be in on, right? So I think in all of this, it's going to be a highly customized contract. It's not going to be sort of a boilerplate thing that is one or the other. Does that kind of answer?
No, I just throwing the question out. You
Yep.
gotta go somewhere with it.
Yeah, yep.
Rebecca.
Yeah, kind of a few little questions here. Well, I guess one is the cost factor. And I'm not opposed to paying a little bit higher to help, one, streamline, but also take some load off to make it a little bit easier burden. But at the same time, I want to make sure we're being efficient with the finances because we're only just at the point, especially with Jefferson Square, where we're seeing daylight financially. And we've been moving in a really good direction. And I want to make sure we continue to stay moving in that good direction. So that's one thing. The other thing, and this is more about kind of that parameters question that I was asking earlier about. I mean, you guys do a lot related to Jefferson Square. You do the maintenance, you do all the work orders, you do all the turnovers, you're doing the marketing, you're doing the showing, you're doing the leasing. I mean, you're doing everything, pretty much everything as far as I know. And some things I can't even think of right now. So I guess, and it sounds like they would potentially be able to take off or take over a good chunk of that. My question is do we want them to do the turnovers? Would that be, I mean, because I think we're already doing some contracting out on that. Isn't that true? So would that continue or would we let them make those choices? Because I mean, I don't want us to lose control over how the funds are used.
Right, yeah, so all of that, again, kind of gets into this customizable approach.
Right.
I will say that I think I kind of heard him allude to it too, and I just know this from my own personal knowledge, that the more that we can give to them, the more I think the better cost that we'll get for their services, the more that we have them just sort of piecemeal, again, the scale thing, and that I think the higher our costs are going to be. But I also want to say, we haven't seen any numbers. We haven't had, this is all happening very quickly. To even get them on the agenda here was fast. So yeah, those questions are all going to kind of come out when we start to talk real numbers. And we're not going to get into anything. We're not going to enter in a contract that we can't afford.
Okay.
Basically. And then to the first point about costs themselves, I'm not sure that it would be an increase in costs. Obviously we had a salary and costs associated with staff on hand, and just knowing where some of the percentages of management companies come in for a full suite of services, I've heard anywhere from 3 to 6%. I don't know where those numbers shake out. So again, I think we're just going to have to, if this is the route that you all feel comfortable with, at least conceptually, having a company come in on, then next step is going to have to dig in a little bit deeper and just start putting numbers in.
Well, I mean, from me personally, I like the reputation of Attic Angels. I've heard nothing but good. I can't think of anything bad I've heard about them. And I think the writing's been on the wall for a while that we were probably going to move in this direction. I would be interested in seeing those numbers, seeing how much bang for the buck we can get, so to speak. And to maybe even make it so that, like Jane was saying, as we move towards this new public housing facility, that's going to be taking up a large portion of your time as we're getting that constructed, getting everybody moved, the whole night, getting everything going on that. It might work out so that your guys' focus is more on that with, the oversight, obviously, of the Jefferson Square also. That's where I'm coming from.
Just a quick question and then Doug. Is your background contracting?
Yes.
That's why he's been able to fill in really perfectly on coordinating with some of the folks that we have over there too. And, Jay's an asset.
So what I would just say is that lots been going through my mind too here recently about what possibly I could take on that Zach did to move forward with hiring another individual to kind of keep the status quo, how the stuff has been run, particularly because everybody is out there is so happy with the general direction. Job Alex has done, Zach's done to make processes that are consistent and, keep moving forward with all that kind of stuff. And what I kept coming back to was the fact that there's only one guy that's been here since around this place since he's been this tall mowing grass, right? Zach had an exceptional set of skills that he derived strictly from this place. And it's going to be really, really difficult, regardless of what I think I should or could take on, or we move to Alex, to find an individual with that well-rounded of skill set that can, continue to provide the services that we're asking for. So regardless of, what I think that I should or would do, ultimately, this group's got to come up with a plan. And unfortunately, I don't know what that looks like for me, what that job description is going to entail. But, I've been with the village now for 5 years, and we had this discussion honestly when I took this position, knowing that the job might change, as the new building was built, and we didn't know what that was going to look like. And just from being around here, I'm not worried about that. I deal with these guys out at the property every day. And as long as, we're upfront with what's going on, I think we've built a lot of trust with them recently. So I think we're in good shape as far as that goes.
Good, thank you. Doug?
I just want to piggyback off of some other comments that I look forward to seeing some financial projections on what this management company would cost. And I think my support of going that route would solely rest on what the trickle down effect would be to the monthly service fees to residents. Because they have been asked to do a lot over the last several years. And while I think a management company is an excellent idea, it has to be reasonable and feasible for them.
Okay. Thank you. Sheila, you've been quiet. Do you have anything?
Nope, I'm just, listening and learning, and we'll be anxious to see some of the financial modeling as well. And certainly take to heart the opinions of the staff and, what they think is going to be the most efficient and effective. So I don't have anything else to offer at this point.
Okay, thank you. I'd never want to ignore people online, so sometimes I don't see their hands. All right, so one of the thoughts that comes to mind for me is that if we could structure the right management contract and figure out what pieces you're still gonna do and then get you guys focused on the new build. It may be a very cost-effective way to go, but part of the way we control that is by knowing their service cost. And we don't know that yet. So if we have a list of services we might like to get, sort of like a grocery list, then we can begin to figure out what it's going to cost and what we can and cannot afford. So I think that's important. How much is in the budget for a staff salary? Do we know?
Well, their salary and benefits, salary, I think, was around 70,000. I don't recall where benefits would sit. 15%? Okay, 18%?
No, you can typically figure benefits around 30 to 35%.
Okay.
So
Right around 100 grand. I'll just also offer a couple extra things here. So I thank you for bringing up the point about the monthly service fees. I think if we're looking to go this route, it's going to be complicated and complex to integrate everything in a way that still gives us what we want. And one of those things, the first thing that came to mind is, well, who controls setting of the monthly service fees? And obviously all that stuff will depend upon what all services we're delegating to them. So it's not going to be a simple process. I will underscore that. The other thing is just timing, right? So we're here in May. Realistically, if I had to put a date to it, obviously there's going to be not just getting costs, but negotiating contracts and things like that. So we're going to be continuing lean and mean for a couple months here. I would say probably till July, until that sorted itself out. That would be my guess. So I guess what I'm hearing is there's support in getting some more details about a management company and then bringing that back to the board. And from my perspective, just trying to streamline this as much as I can. I may get those details for you, and I may simultaneously look at potentially getting more into the weeds on contracts as well, so that if there is an opportunity where everybody feels comfortable with the details, we can maybe continue to expedite the process, if I'm being clear with that. Just because neither one of us sitting here wants to have the decline in services that we're going to have if it's just the two of us running for an extended period of time. So am I correct in understanding that there's no hard no to a management company?
Yep.
Okay.
Not on my part.
Did he give you, do you have any idea what you're charging, like?
Didn't even go there.
Side, nothing?
Didn't even go there again because I wanted to just understand where you all sat on that. And then we have to circle up and see what services we actually want to look at.
Just the things that came to me when we were talking about this a while ago was that many people associate Attic Angels
Right.
with end-of-life services or nursing homes. And so I wish they'd change the name of their management company. But that being said, there would be, if we chose this group, and they're a good group, everybody, they provide good services. But there'd be some public affairs around it to make sure people understand, no, you're not living in an assisted living. You're not, this is not end of life. This is really just a continuation of what's been going on.
Yeah, it's still Jefferson Square.
Renee?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that the name, the name's not gonna be anywhere other than they do the management of services. And they have an arm of that, so.
Right. But
Jay,
I'm
were you-
sure there are people that go there when you're older.
Yeah.
No, I was just gonna talk about a second about the workload. I did reach out to Greg Hall about, well, it came to my mind yesterday, actually, when I was gonna leave early, realizing that right now, if I leave early, technically, we don't have anybody without public services to do emergency maintenance. So without knowing, that they were accepting of doing that, Greg's great, the staff has been great, but it's just another layer to this going on. I'm gonna have time off that I'm gonna need to take, and service is still gonna need to happen. I had an emergency water leak today that I had to take care of. So making sure that as much as I am comfortable doing the maintenance, having backup that potentially, this has been a work in progress with the village staff and the on-call system anyway. Whether it's the correct way to move forward, especially if we have the opportunity through a management company to take care of part of that burden with a larger team. It's gonna be something definitely we're gonna have to look at, cost-wise, also take into effect.
I didn't think about that, but we offer 24/7 coverage and weekends have been covered and you're one person.
Well, that's with the public services crew though. They take care of it from 4 o'clock in the evening until 7, and then, 2 o'clock on Friday until Monday morning, so. Which I'm also part of the rotation on that, but yeah, it's a whole bunch of people that are, it used to be just Ron and Zach, and they just moved away from that. And like I said, we're still trying to iron out the logistics of that whole thing, making sure that there's continuity of services for people over there too, so.
Well, I think that we are all in agreement that we should explore it and think about how it could be structured and organized.
One final point, and then we can go wherever you'd like us to go. Is so for the new facility, as part of that process, this is now for public housing in the new facility that we'd be constructing. I was initially planning on having Zach and I do a LIHTC training program so that we could essentially be an approved management entity for some of the grant funding and awards that we're going out for. The WHEDA, WHEDA is the organization that puts out LIHTC tax credits and puts the way that this is running roughly $5 to $6 million of cash into our building, which is fantastic. But they have a list of approved management entities for an application. So my thought was we would go and get approved, and that would be part of our application. Spoke with the folks at WHEDA, they were fine with that. With Zach moving on, that's still an option. Either Jay and I or just myself could get that training. But there are also companies that are approved management entities, and there are some reputable companies too. I'm not in a place right now with the transition of Section 18 and some of the HUD stuff that's going on, where I think we should be looking at that at this moment. But I do want to put that out there too for something for future consideration as well.
And we think Attic Angels is a credentialed management company.
No, they're not.
Okay.
That's another reason why it probably wouldn't be a great fit on that side.
So that's on the public housing side, not on the Jefferson Square side. Okay. All
2
right.
cents worth. I want you to get their certification.
Duly noted.
I want us to maintain as much of that in-house.
All right. Any other questions? Do you have enough from us? Okay. Thank you, guys. Let's move on the agenda then. You can stay there, Jay. You don't have to sit in the back of the room. All right. Item 6.5, discussion and possible action on resolution 2024-506, authorizing the executive director to submit an amended supplemental, narrative to HUD associated with its Section 18 application for the disposition of public housing.
I think we're very, very close to the finish line. I've said that before, probably. So obviously you're all aware there's been back and forth with this approval letter that HUD, the SAC office, had issued us. I've gone back and forth with their team and finally have a clear direction, which is to have a board resolution to revise our approach. If you recall, we were initially having the transaction of dispositioning the properties via a seller's note rather than cash. They considered that below fair market value. We wanted that to be at fair market value so that eventually we could sell those properties at any cost without a land use restriction on them. The method that the SAC has said to do that means we have to actually use cash in order to do that. So what this resolution will do is that it will communicate to the SAC office that that's our intention. We are essentially process-wise, the CDA will be providing funds to the LLC, which we've created back before I even came on board here, which is Yahara Housing LLC, I think it is, who will then purchase our properties at fair market value, which we determined was $457,000. That was the appraisal that we got, and we will put that money back where it came from. Carol and I met with the auditors at Baker Tilly just to kind of run the process by them And there was no real issues with that. I don't know if there's anything that you want to talk about with that process, but so that's good to have your auditors on board with that. So ultimately, this should be the final step in getting our final approval.
Good. Is there,
Move to approve.
you have a motion? Do we have a second?
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, there is no old business. Reports, Housing Division, Jefferson Square Financial Update.
So because this is a tighter turnaround in the month, we don't have financials in the packet. We will have those included in your packets for the next meeting.
Okay,
But I could give just a few quick updates on that. So mostly the bigger ticket items, and they're relatively bigger ticket. They're still small, I guess, in the grand scheme of some of our costs. We had some of our audit costs hit across redevelopment, Jefferson Square, and public housing. For redevelopment, we did purchase the tables and chairs. So the ADA purchase, ADA compliant tables and chairs for the alleyway. Those have already shipped. We have those. Our public services team has already ordered some lumber for the posts, and I believe they might have even put in an order for string lights. So some of the work in the alleyway there will be going pretty soon. And those are pretty much the bigger ones on the slide that you were just pulling up for occupancy. 720 Jefferson Square is still, 720 DeForest Street is still pending. I have had some calls on it. I spoke to a few individuals. Haven't got anybody in for a showing yet, but I'm hoping that we can get that going sooner than later, because it's still sitting there.
how long has that been open?
I think we're going on 5 months now. Does that sound right?
I think it was October, end of October when he moved out.
So 5 or
Was
6
part of
months.
it took a while for turnover or?
No, so it hasn't had anything to do with it turnover, actually. Zach, when he was still here, went through our list front to back. A lot of the life lease stuff is hard because it's timing, as it is with selling a house and moving into a new house too. So timing of it has been an issue. Another individual, I think Zach might have said this the last time, couldn't get their truck in the garage. That was a barrier. So it's just kind of case by case issues so far. The actual unit turn itself, we haven't started because one of the things that we do is obviously help residents come in and make their selections before we do it. So to this point, it's just been finding the right candidate for it.
All right, and Meadow Lane is still pending.
So that was there, all those units are occupied. I think there's been some question as to whether or not one of the residents is planning to move out, and I think it's a little unclear as to whether or not that is the case.
Okay.
So that, I think that's the pending vacancy,
Okay,
but public housing is full up.
that's good. And life at public housing is copacetic.
Again, like you said, it's a good window into all of the things that Zach's position had to manage, because I have been called for quite a few applications. Also, it's been really, on a personal level, also very interesting to see just how many people are in need of housing of that kind. I've been getting a lot of calls, more than I expected I would, in the short amount of time that I've been in this position fielding those calls. So that has been an eye opener.
Can Jay take some of those calls?
We'll talk about it.
All right, anything else on the financial stuff? Carol, are we good? Okay,
Still a little early in the year to say we're good or not, but yeah, things look fine at the moment.
okay, great.
We're on tracks.
While we're on financials, I will say too that I would like to start budgeting for next year, but with some of the discussions that we're having now, it's not really gonna be practical to start that just yet.
Okay. All right, and you talked about the redevelopment vision kind of already? Financials?
Yep.
Okay. And then we have the prudential investment statement was in your packet. Is there any questions or comments on that?
I'll ask a question of you all. Do you want the full, however many, 16 pages of this? Okay. I'm seeing a yes and I'm seeing a no.
Well, if we have it, people can choose to read the whole thing or not.
Okay, sounds good.
As long as it's electronic, it's not printing a lot of paper. Okay, all right. Anything else? Otherwise, I think there's no communication. We're not doing a closed session. So if there's no other business to come before this body, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a
Second.
Second.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're out in an hour.
Bye, Sheila.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.